Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic came to the fore, we get to read, we get to hear, we get to watch media, social media portals, business networking platforms, industry bodies, and of course various government agencies doling out a veritable but a morbid serenade of contracting economies, curtailed lifestyles, and very sadly crippling layoffs. Now, pronouncements from various business entities announcing the curtailing or the shutting down of their operations with a complete or partial short term or long term remuneration reduction, or in some cases, withholding of the same even to employees who have been sweating it out for these companies, industries, and businesses not just for years on end but decades on end, pink slipping of employees coupled with an extremely bleak and intimidating forecasts of economic recovery and so on and so forth has been the order of the day. Now, the biggest casualty of this unfortunate turn of events has been the wage earner, and I'm not using this term in a deprecating, disparaging, or a denigrating sense. So, irrespective of the fact, whether you're talking about white collared, grey collared, pink collared workers or executives on one end of the spectrum, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have blue collared workers, your contractual workers, your daily wage earners, especially those from the unorganized sectors. On the other end of the spectrum, it's these people who have been and still are suffering the most. So today we are going to talk about a very important process, that is how to ace these layoffs. Now, ACE is an acronym wherein A stands for accepting of, C stands for contending with, and E stands for easing out layoffs. Hi folks, this is Ruhail Khan, and before we go ahead and delve deeper into this topic of how to ace layoffs, I request you to please subscribe to this channel right now as you're watching this video, and please once you run through this video, please like and share it, and do not forget to comment on the same. Thank you very much. Well, going ahead and thinking in solidarity about these employees, especially these laid off employees, which could be me, you, or anybody out there, I basically started wondering as to how they or their families will be trying to contend with these tough times right now, with this new reality in their lives, and then work around to probably get a resolution happening. Obviously, I mulled over various scenarios like, how many of them would be the only or the major earning members of their families, which in many cases would be so basically. And how many would be having residences of their own or living in rented premises, how many of them would have ailing parents, unmarried siblings, school-going kids, etc. to take care of. How many of them would have loan, credit card monthly installments, which can be a huge burden, and of course some EMIs to pay off. And I also wondered how many of them would have enrolled for full-time, part-time, or online education courses to up the ante when it comes to sharpening their skills so that they can have a better life in the corporate or non-corporate worlds. Fine. I also thought about people out there, who would have been engaged to marry or who would have planned their marriages anytime soon, and more importantly, how many would have substantial savings, wealth creating instruments, and health or life insurance, which is paramount. And this list could go on and on and on, and all this sounds very heartbreaking to me, honestly. Now, I do not intend to run you through a lengthy diatribe on the current and the projected economic prospects and scenarios across the world, but I'd like to basically share some details with you so that your understanding about the same is enhanced. Now, we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has spread with alarming speed, infecting millions, bringing economic activity to a near standstill across countries, as countries have imposed some strict restrictions of various types in order to halt the spread of the virus. Now, as the health and human toll grows, the economic damage is already done, and it's already evident and represents the largest economic shock that the world has experienced in decades. Now, the June 2020 Global Economic Prospects issue describes both the immediate and near-term outlook for the impact of the pandemic and the long-term impact of the pandemic and the consequent damage that it has dealt to prospects for growth. We all know for a matter of fact that the British economy has had the worst contraction of the last 300 years, and if you talk about India, recently we had a scenario wherein we saw a contraction of some around 23.9% in a particular quarter of this year. Now these are tough times, and the baseline forecast which I talked about, which was developed using market exchange rate weights, the deepest global recession in decades. Despite the extraordinary efforts of governments to counter the downturn with fiscal and monetary impetus and stimulus as well as support policies. Now, over the longer horizon, the deeper recessions triggered by this pandemic are supposed to leave lasting scars basically through a multitude of complements or variables, as we call them, like they could be lower investment, they could be an erosion of human capital, especially through lost work and schooling. And then, of course, we could also see a fragmentation of global trade and supply linkages. Now, all this in this crisis highlights the need for urgent action to do what basically? To cushion the pandemic's health and economic consequences basically, protect vulnerable populations, and of course set the stage for a long-lasting recovery. Now that's a very tall order to comply with, fine. And for emerging markets and developing economies, many of which face daunting challenges and of course vulnerabilities, it's critical to strengthen public health systems to basically address the challenges posed by this informality, and of course implement reforms that ensure and that support strong and sustainable growth once the pandemic abates. Fine. With per capita income contracting in the largest fraction of countries globally since 1870. 1870. Just remember the year. That's almost about 1.5 centuries back. This is what we're contending with right now. And the worst part is that this is not all, basically. There are some frightening scenarios which we have to contend with, and it's better to be informed so that we can be prepared than to be taken by surprise, basically. Fine. So, advanced economies are projected to sink, mark my words, 7%. And that weakness will spill over obviously to the outlook for emerging markets and developing countries too, are forecasted to contract 2.5% globally, basically, as they cope with their own domestic outbreaks of the virus and their own ability to contend with this virus, given the limitations of infrastructure that these countries have to contend with, right? Now this would represent the weakest showing by this group of countries, basically, or this group of economies in the last 60 years. These are mind-boggling figures and facts and statistics. I mean, these are to be taken very seriously. Now, every region is subject to substantial growth downgrades in the forthcoming days, weeks, months, quarters, and even in some cases it's going to be there for a couple of years. And I'll have to run you through some statistics out here. So East Asia and Pacific will grow by a scant 0.5%. Now, is that even growth if you factor inflation into the scheme of things? South Asia will contract by 2.7%, as if it was growing at a great pace right now. Sub-Saharan Africa by 2.8%, Middle East and North Africa by 4.2%, Europe and Central Asia by 4.7%, and Latin America by 7.2%. Now these downturns or these downward spirals, they are expected to reverse years of hard-earned progress towards developmental goals and tip tens of millions of people again below the poverty line in many of these countries, across especially developing countries and third world countries obviously. But many emerging and developing economies were already experiencing challenges of their own before this COVID pandemic happened and turned the entire global economic scenario topsy-turvy. Fine. And the shock of COVID-19 makes these challenges all the more daunting, debilitating, and of course, the denouement is not going to be anything else than dystopian in this context. Now, even though this is informative and scary at the same time, but this is useful for industrialists, for policymakers, for politicians, for business owners, and economists. But what about you? What about you out there who's contending with this economic scenario practically on your own? Now, that's a moot point to think about, and that's what we're going to address out here. Now, layoffs are tough, they're taxing, they're troublesome, and they're very difficult to contend with, and they can become unmanageable, especially if you're caught off guard. And in case economies fall downhill at a breakneck speed, especially the way that they're doing right now across the globe, even though the percentiles or the percentages of contraction or downward spirals may differ from country to country, from continent to continent, depending upon the development or the evolution of specific economies of scale that these specific countries have been able to achieve till date, right? Now, re-employment crops up as an additional challenge. That's a huge challenge to contend with. And more so if you happen to be a senior or a top management professional. It's not going to be very easy for entry level or mid level executives, but it's going to be especially tough if you are a senior or a top management professional. Gone are the times. Gone are the times when businesses would prepare and equip you for layoffs. I mean, that was considered to be the decent way of doing business, and that was considered to be an extension of an employee-centric orientation of a particular business, given the fidelity matrix that was involved into dealings when it involved the company or the business leadership and the employees or the workers, or for that matter, the team members, as we call them right now. Fine. But in this age where the average lifespan of a Fortune 500 company is not slated to exceed, of course, with some exceptions, 12 to 15 odd years. Now that was, that was something which was unheard of 50 years back, when an average Fortune 500 company would be expected to be stretching its timelines of longevity to somewhere around half a century or so. But these are tough times, and you don't need to be a genius to understand the gravity of the situation at hand. Now, I'm not here to intimidate you, I'm not here to frighten you, I'm not here to make you apprehensive. I'm here to make you conscious about what you're dealing with. Because if you really understand in its entirety the entire matrix of what you're dealing with, the entire set of variables which you'll see cropping up, you'll be able to deal with them like this. Because then you would have understood the problem statement, and once you understand what a problem is like, the only thing left for you to do is to think, visualize, plan, script, and execute as resolution matrix. That's how we do it, right? And that's how we're going to do this one too. Trust me on that. Now, basically, with a few exceptions, given the current VUCA ethos, and when I say VUCA, I'm talking about four complements: volatility, uncertainty, confusion, and ambiguity. Many businesses live with the maxim of hire in the morning and fire by the evening. Not literally, though, per se, but securities of tenure are basically a utopian dream nowadays, and disruption is the defining credo of this dystopian world. So basically, how do you accept? How do you contend with? How do you ease out these layoffs? Fine. But basically, it all begins with an understanding and acceptance of the fact that it could happen to you, it could happen to me, it could happen to anybody out there. Irrespective of where you stand in any particular hierarchy, be it a business, a corporate environment, a mom pop show, a roadside store, it could be any economic dispensation that you have been aligned to for any number of years, decades, or whatever. And irrespective of where you stand in the hierarchy out there, irrespective of how many years you spent burning your midnight oil for the particular business, or whatever your monthly remunerations and fixed and fluid expenditures are, you and I and all of us out there have to prepare for this finality, which may or may not happen anytime soon. And later, I hope it does not happen to anybody, but that's wishful thinking, and it's better, it's prudent to be realistic about situations which have a probability of happening, because if anything can go wrong, it does go wrong, and it can go wrong, so better be prepared for it. And you basically have to prepare for it right from your first day in office. And this is not a joke, this is serious. You have to prepare for it from your first day in office. And this is a presumption that I'm doling out. This is a very sort of positive connotation of things which could be happening to you. That is, you could still be in a job. Now, that may or may not be the case in the next few days, weeks, months, or years. Not that I wish anything bad for anybody out there, but this is a possibility that can unlock any of us, any of our lives, any of our social, personal, or professional persona anytime soon. I hope it does not happen to anybody out there, but wishful thinking simply does not serve any purpose. It's better to be practical, it's better to be prudent, it's better to be prepared so that we can face any eventuality with success and content with it. So how do you go about preempting the effects of a probable layoff, which may or may not happen anytime soon in any specific time and space continuum? Fine. Now, to begin with, you need to do a couple of things which I'm going to be listing out for you. You need to map all the sources of your income. When I say all, I mean all. Passive, active, dormant. You need to mark your fixed, fluid, and flexible expenses. There's a difference between flexible and fluid, which I'll explain later on. Now, you should be freezing 60% of your absolute earnings, out of which 40% should go into a dedicated savings and wealth fund or a wealth creation portfolio, and 20% should be dedicated basically to a contingency fund, because contingencies crop out of nowhere and it's better for you to be prepared about dealing with them. Now, you have to make sure that you track them all, always. You just don't dump them as a corpus out there, fine? And you have to track them consistently and make the requisite changes as and when required. And then you have to make sure that you do not in any case exceed the 40% mark for your fixed and fluid expenses, right? And any additional income should be rededicated to a flexible expenditure. Now, you're supposed to live a credit-free life, because if you're loaded with credit, you're never going to lead a contented life. You're never going to have a good night's sleep. So it's better for you, not to use credit cards. Fine. Splurge on non-essentials. Subscribe to compulsive or herd shopping mentality, as some of us do unfortunately subscribe to or fall prey to at one time or the other. Fine. Now, you need to scout and scalp as many additional sources of income as you can, because I'm not going to take it. I mean, this is a highly unpalatable proposition for me. If any of you out there tells me that, I just have a single source of income, there's nothing else that I can do or nothing else that I can visualize as a source of additional income. Now, that is a statement which is an insult to your intellect, which is an insult to your very existence, because all of us across domains, across social, intellectual, academic, economic pedigrees, do have our own set of competencies. All of us can find out ways and means in which to generate additional sources of income. I mean, you could be good at public speaking, you could be good at writing, you could do part-time journalism for newspapers, for journals, you could start a vlog, you could become a blogger, fine, you could start a YouTube channel, you could be talking about some life hacks out there. You could write a book for that matter, and you could go for online tutorials, or you could coach people on various aspects of whatever you think and you are good at, basically. So don't try to delude yourself or me into believing that there is nothing else you can do other than whatever you're doing right now, whether it's a job or a business or any other vocation that you find yourself currently engaged with, right? And then, what you have to do, you have to make sure that you invest in and develop a strong professional network. Now, this is something which is going to last you for a lifetime. I mean, this is something which, if used in the right sense and in the right manner, with the right kind of an approach, can really change your life, personal as well as professional. Because networking is the crux of whatever you're trying to achieve in today's world. Without a network, it's not going to be impossible, but yes, it's going to be very difficult for you to do anything in this world, whether you're talking about your social, professional or personal networks. You've got to be having them, you've got to be knowing how to utilize them, and you've got to be nurturing them and cherishing them, because they're going to be holding you in good stead across a set of circumstances. Fine. And then, what I personally believe is very important is that we all need to pray, we need to meditate, we need to exercise, we need to develop a very positive outlook in life, because all this comes for free. It doesn't cost you anything to be an optimist. I'm a perpetual optimist. I cannot even subscribe or even relish the prospects of subscribing to a pessimistic attitude in life. Nothing bogs me down. Nothing bogs me down, because it doesn't really help to get bogged down to be pessimistic about anything in this world, because pessimism does not lead to any kind of a resolution. It just I mean, it's an attrition of your time. It's an attrition of your energy. It's an attrition of your intellect, and it's an exercise, which has no credence. It's an exercise without a positive outcome. It's an exercise. It's an effort down the drain, basically. So it really does not really hold you in good stead. It's like smiling and frowning, fine. And incidentally, as we all know, it takes a lesser number of facial muscles to smile than it takes to frown. So why are you wasting your energy frowning? Why not smile? Why not stay positive? Why not stay optimistic? Fine. And I can assure you that if you follow these rules without fail, you will be substantially well equipped to deal with a layoff while you strive to start earning again, on the presumption that you're still working fine. And God forbid, if you do get laid off, or unfortunately, if you've already been laid off, I'll recommend a couple of things for you to run through, to execute, so that you're able to ace your layoff successfully, right? Now, it can start off with you either paying off your entire outstanding loan, either in full or part, and if you're still somehow unable to do that in its entirety or in part or whatever, I'd recommend appraising your bank or a financial institution about your situation, and basically get your EMIs deferred or waived or reduced. And then I would request you to pay off your credit card dues if you're unfortunately still using one, because otherwise this could turn out to be a debt trap for you. And then reduce your fluid expenses, basically. Do away with flexible ones and focus on the fixed ones only. The core ones, the house rent, the kids' fee, the electricity connection, the telephone bills, the internet connection, your household groceries and stuff. Your coffee dates can sort of be put on a back burner. Your other outings can be relegated to the corner of your house, and you can have a vacation at home if you want to. Don't go for these kind of additional expenses. Now, I also request you to take your family into confidence and make sure that they are on board without intimidating or frightening them along the way. You need to develop a consensus as to how you are going to be dealing with this situation as a family, not as an individual, right? Now, you need to maintain your schedule. You need to go for personal grooming as usual. You need to simply go for your familiar commitments. Make sure that you live up to those commitments and societal obligations as much as is permissible. And then I would recommend, on a very serious note, to revisit your resume, reach out to your network, and relinquish your professional ego, because unless and until you do that, you'll see that you are getting stonewalled at every step of your effort, your endeavor to get back into the livelihood spectrum. Fine. Now, you need to grab any or all the opportunities that come your way. Now, this is important for you. This is a sustenance matrix operating out here without any predispositions of designation and remuneration. So, for example, if you're a vice president and you get a senior managerial job, go and grab it. This could turn out to be a gold mine. At least it will help you take care of some expenditure out there, which is mounting on a day-to-day basis, right? Now, I want you to try and get enrolled for either a full-time or a part-time or an online course. That's only if you can afford it, fine. And do that only to sort of ramp up your skills. You could go for a certification, you could go for a diploma, you could go for any kind of an executive education if you can afford it. If you think this is an affordable proposition, if you think this is a viable proposition, fine. But if it's not possible for you, there are so many free courses out there on the internet out there nowadays. There are some companies offering free courses across various complements of various disciplines. Of course, all of them would be entry level, or some of them at the most would be intermediate. For advanced courses, they expect you to pay for them, but it's like manna from heaven if you get to have a free online course happening, fine. And I would recommend not losing any such opportunity to spruce up your talent quorum, your capability and competence spectrum, right? Now, what is very important for you also is to stay visible and to stay cognizant, to stay vocal by attending seminars, boot camps, professional conferences, by probably blogging, writing articles in newspapers, in industry forums, trying to attend webinars by various specialists, commenting on social networking platforms, writing posts and articles on professional networking platforms like LinkedIn, joining various groups, appraising them about your situation. I'm sure that all these factors put together are going to be a force multiplier in your pursuit to ace your layoff. So above all, what I want you or anybody out there to do is to stay positive, to stay healthy, and strive consistently with a never say die attitude, with a never say give up attitude. Because persistence and consistency is the key towards the materialization of any desire, dream, or dream. Take it from me. And this is not something which I read in a book somewhere, fine. This is something which I have experienced in my life. And my life is a veritable testimony. It's a veritable testimony to the fact that persistence and consistency pays. And it pays positively. It pays in an enriching manner. It pays in a manner which you would not have even speculated about or visualized about. Trust me on that one, fine. So the idea is very simple. You are going to make it happen, irrespective of whether it takes days, weeks, months, quarters, or God forbid, even years. But you are going to make it. You're going to make it happen. You are going to crumble the cookie the way you want it to be. Fine? Wonderful. So please make sure that you subscribe to this channel, like and share this video, and do not forget to leave your comments out there. And I want you to take care of yourself, stay positive, stay healthy, follow all the safety protocols, take care of all your near and dear ones, and make sure that you never ever give up. So bye for now, take care, God bless, and thank you very much for your time.